The Queens of Spice podcast is created for adult audiences only. Our show contains cursing, vulgar content, dark humor, descriptions of sexual acts and desires, and is not suitable for listeners under the age of 18. Some episodes also contain themes which may be triggering for listeners. Please take care of yourself.
Are you calling me out for being an orphan? Because that's mean.
Welcome to the Queens of Spice podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Ruggy Chu. I'm here with my two BFFs, Jack and Ash. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Happy birthday, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Your
Happy
birthday is on
birthday,
Christmas
Jack.
Day. This is a little premature, but you know it's fine. We're
She's
celebrating.
used to things being premature.
Yeah, she is.
Shout
So
out bucket nuts.
was a bucket nuts. So we're reading a very special book for Jacqueline's birthday, and Ashton didn't have to read this book. Jacqueline and I read this book. Fortunately, it's called "A Little's Unicorn: A Stuffie Hospital Romance" by Ellie Rose.
Okay, can I just say, when Rachel and I picked books, it was books that we genuinely liked. Jacqueline just went off the fucking rocker and looked for a book that was going to drive me insane. As you can tell by the look, nobody can see Jacqueline. She looks like one of those really happy dogs, like sits staring at their owners like, you're just going to pet me and I can't wait it. Like, mouth open, staring happily, like,
My
She's
head
so
out the
happy.
window.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Jacqueline, for your birthday, I got you your own unicorn stuffy.
I fucking love you.
And it's
Thank
it's
you.
really pretty and cute. And I picked it specifically for you. And I want you to cherish it and love it forever.
It looks like it has a spot in its ass that you could open up and shove things in.
Awkward.
Why would you say things like that?
It's very
Well,
top heavy. I love it.
it's-
There's also an adopt-in tag, so you can go register online to adopt it.
Oh my god.
Holy
Happy birthday,
fuck.
Jack.
She also got me tuxedo.
Yes, we had your favorite cake earlier too, obviously. Because
She went out. She just made the conscious decision to go out and buy the tuxedo cake. She wanted to buy the tuxedo cake, so she bought the tuxedo cake.
I intentionally went out and bought that cake just
She
for you.
wanted to, so she did. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Jack.
Thank you, Daddy.
So Lillie Cooper loves her brand new job at Stuffie Hospital, where she helps restore well-loved stuffies to their former glory. It's the perfect job for a secret little, which means she doesn't miss having a daddy quite so much. When journalist Aiden Havers comes to interview the Stuffie Hospital team for a local paper, he's quick to notice how quiet Lillie lights up when she talks about her patients. But when he discovers that she has none of her own, he goes on a mission to find her the perfect stuffy.
What the fuck is this?
So welcome to the Stuffie Hospital Romance series.
It's a series?
This is book 1 of 8. It's following mostly. I'm pretty sure all of it's the. I'm pretty sure it's following all the employees at the Stuffie Hospital.
I want to preface this by saying there is no shame in the little game if that is what you are into. As a mom, I personally struggle with it. For
As
like,
a mom or a mommy?
I'm gonna punch you. I just struggle with it. There's no hate. There's no shame. It's kind of like water sports where it's like, I know it exists, but it's like the idea is just like, no, please no, please no, please no. So my reaction does not reflect on my opinion of you as a human if you so happen to be a little Jacqueline. Continue, because this is not,
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I can wholeheartedly be like, this is not my jam.
Yes.
I was uncomfortable reading this. I've read several of these books just preparing for this.
I can't believe Jacqueline got you to read several.
I mean, in fairness, Jack didn't make me do anything. Let's be honest. But like we covered a book that we ended up not being able to do because the author was questionable. So we didn't want to go down that path.
I'm very sad about that.
And then the other book that I read was a kind of contingency if this one didn't pan out. So I read 3 little books in total. So I'm a little versed in this now. Now, I'm quite versed in this now. Now the thing is, okay, here's the thing. I'm not into this. This is not my jam. This is very uncomfortable for me to read. It's like one of my icks for sure. However, I am going to give this the time of frickin' day. And I did my research and I looked up all of the like information about littles and the kink and the tropes and the fetish and how it all works and all these things. So I'm going to be very serious about it in that regard. In that like, I'm gonna do it justice because we're never doing it again. I guarantee you that. So
This
Jack,
is just pure chaos.
Jack, would you like to talk about the book? Do you?
Okay. What do I say?
I mean, you say whatever you want. I'll go through the story.
You are me today. You're talking with Rachel about the story.
Yeah, so you get to be Ash. So I'm gonna talk about the story, and then you can interject on some finer points.
Okay.
And Ash, I
Like
gave
your
you've got
favorites.
crayons and you've got markers. If
And
you
a
wanted
space to draw.
and a space to draw on your notes.
I'm just going to stab the paper a whole bunch.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's it with colors though, so it looks nice at least. I appreciate that. So Lillie Cooper, she had a daddy before who like wasn't a really good dude. He just like it was one of those like he was into the fetishization, I think, of the kink in general.
He didn't
but-
really like respect her wishes and such.
He wasn't like open and honest and communicating with her. So like she wanted to read stories, like little stories, and he was just like, no,
No.
Like Robert Munch?
Probably.
maybe.
She likes to
Sandra
snuggle,
Boynton?
She likes to snuggle up in bed
Huh.
and get read the stories, and she gets to see the
And
pictures.
see the pictures and stuff.
So maybe the guy was illiterate.
No, I just don't think he was into like. And this is the thing. It's like,
Oh, he wants to fuck her as a little, but he doesn't want to do all the... Okay, I get
yeah. So this is the thing about the little dynamic, and so it's the umbrella term is age play for the whole thing, and it's dealing with littles, middles, and caregivers is how they use the phrase.
it. What's a medal?
A middle is like teenagers, so between the ages of 13 and 17 to 19-ish area.
So like littles
Some
are
middle
like,
schoolers and up. Yeah.
That's an actual thing?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because there's babies and diaper play, and then there's like
More
kids,
like toddlery kids.
yeah,
Like,
and then there's like teenagers, and yeah. So yes, it's all of them. That's. Stop looking at me like that. Don't look at me like that. Look at Jacqueline like that. She
It's
picked
more
it.
disturbing that one of my notes is pretty sure Jack is a little, or at least wants to be.
I didn't write that
Ashton,
note.
those notes are for you only. They're not for Jacqueline.
You're really,
Jacqueline reads her notes.
yeah, but these are my notes. I don't get to read your notes, and you don't get to read my notes.
She didn't even talk
normally.
about how much I like cinnamon one time. I wrote that 5 times on her page.
She reads them. Oh, I don't like this position.
So the dynamic in this is called DDLG, which is Daddy Dom Little Girl, or which is like also known as CGL, which is Caregiver Little dynamic. There's kind of 3 shades to DDLG that we're gonna quickly go through. There's vanilla, which does not involve any sexuality in the role play whatsoever. It just sticks to a caregiver little relationship. There's kinky, where it's like there's kinky where you play at the daddy and like his little princess or his little girl
punishment and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so there's like light spanking and punishment, and it's almost like foreplay to some degree, leading into like adult play later. And then there's the hardcore BDSM kind of slave master dynamic too, where it's like master mistress like takes complete control over the little slave responsibilities, decisions.
That seems so
It's like
contradictory.
it's power play. Listen, just because I'm not into it doesn't mean I can't understand it. But you're right.
You probably could understand it a little bit more because no.
Go
No.
on.
Hear me out. A, you used to work at Excitement Video.
It's true.
B, you were into things that are not necessarily along the vanilla line, so you have a broader understanding of certain BDSM things.
I would also say that not even that, but like when it comes to people and their kinks and that kind of stuff, I like to think I'm fairly open-minded about those things, and so I like to gather information about them.
That's fair.
And so like
And
don't
usually I do,
don't
but-
get me wrong, like yeah, and in fairness too, like there are some things that just give me the ick though, and the age play is one of them for sure. But that didn't, like I said, doesn't mean I'm not going to research it and like do my due diligence here.
To me, it's just like that's.
Yeah, you just like shut off and you're done, and that's fair.
Yeah, because
Yep.
there are certain things that I'm just like,
Line. Yeah, hard line. That's fair. Because I mean, and this is the thing
Line,
about
Jacqueline.
and that's the thing about this dynamic and fetish in general is that like it's about open, honest communication and being able to talk about those needs that you have, and for your caregiver to meet those needs that you have as a little or as a middle or whatever. And so the original daddy that she had was like not open to that level of communication and that part of the dynamic. Like it really was just a fetishization of what was going on. It wasn't really like into the whole dynamic and the switch that she goes through of like, no, she actually becomes like a little person basically.
Or perhaps he was like more hardcore as opposed to where she may be vanilla.
And that's a good point. Yeah, where it's like he's in a different shade than she is.
Yeah.
And so like that's why
Just not a great match overall.
no, of course. And
To me,
so
it sounds red flaggy.
oh, for sure. Like the dude
massively.
the dude was like, and they play it out in the book too of like her Aiden, who becomes her actual daddy later on, has that conversation of like, you like that is not how you're supposed to be treated, and like she's come to terms with all those things, and there's conversations had about it. Because that is one thing I noticed across all the books that I read about littles is that like the books that are done purposefully to kind of delve into this dynamic are very much sussed out at the communicative level. So like everything is talked about and everything is like, because they sit down even in this one. Okay, we'll go through the story and I'll explain it a little bit more. So she's working at the Stuffie Hospital. She has a degree in textiles.
She's a restoration specialist.
She's a restoration specialist. She has always been like all about fabrics and textiles and that kind of stuff. She's also on the spectrum, which you'll be surprised to know.
No, I wouldn't.
She's and she talks really, really in depth about her kind of sensory things that she has, and like she's really good at articulating what she knows about herself, which I really appreciated a lot. Because
she
like
talks about like her stimming and all that.
yeah, and like and she does this. She over apologizes for a lot of stuff too, especially like to Aiden, where she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing this thing. He's like, no, that's fine. Like that.
Be you.
Yeah, be you. Like be exactly who you are. Like that's what I'm here for. So Aiden comes into the Stuffie Hospital because they had been doing this program with a local hospital, where they were going in to help like young patients basically who were going through surgeries and that kind of stuff, and they would like show how the surgery was going to be prepared, but like on a stuffy animal, and like help him sew it back up and stuff. And so like there was that kind of they were working on that kind of program, but like this in it itself is like a hospital where you set it's a Stuffie hospital where you send your stuffed animals that have been damaged or whatever, and they repair them and then they send them back to you.
There's that one on TikTok that creates stuffies, and like they create stuffies for kids who have like the specific disability or ailment, so like with a pump and like all that stuff. That I think is really cute. This one is like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, so they have a wall of stuffies who are like waiting for homes basically, and when they get a chance to restore them, they like donate them back to charity, or people take them home and care for them. And anyway,
They've
so it's
been
like
abandoned.
Yeah,
Where
or
they
donated.
They have like clients who like bring their stuffy to get repaired like on purpose.
So this is like the island of misfit toys.
Kind of, yeah.
But so there's this wall of stuffies where when they have like some downtime, they'll work on those.
I really want to stab that unicorn.
That one?
Yeah.
He's so cute though. Look at his eyeballs.
Don't stab them.
There's a big one too, and I'm like, I can't. That's too much unicorn. That's the perfect amount of unicorn in my opinion.
That's the perfect.
I'll post a picture in social later because it's adorable.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Krampus's dick.
Whoa.
That's amazing. Swoon.
That is amazing.
Merry Christmas to me. So Aiden comes in because he's doing research. He's writing an article about this company, the Stuffie Hospital, and talking about like the initiative and all that stuff that they were doing with the local hospitals. And so he ended up talking to Lillie and asking her about Stuffie Hospital and her experience and how she works and all that stuff. And so she gives him a tour, and even at this point, she like gets a vibe off of him. Like he gives off like daddy vibes almost. And I mean that in like, not like a father daddy, as in like a daddy dom situation. So like he's very caring and he pays attention and makes eye contact and like is very present in the conversation, actually wants to hear her, and all. Like it's almost like
sounds
a
like
kid.
a decent
You're
human
not
being.
You're not wrong.
Basically.
You are not wrong.
So if you're a decent human being, you're obviously a daddy dom.
You could be.
Amazing.
I brought Jacqueline cake. I'm a daddy dom. So they make this kind of like they have like a connection or whatever, but like that's whatever. And then he leaves.
whatever.
Well, it is what it is. And then he goes on, like he leaves after the day, and she goes home, whatever.
Yeah, just like a short little thing.
Yeah, it's just a little like intro to the book. And then during her lunch, Ralphie, one of her coworkers,
Wait, what?
Was
Ralphie an adult?
Yeah.
They're all adults.
Okay, continue.
She sits down with Ralphie to have lunch, and he asks her to attend an event with her that evening because she's not like an out little. And I think one of the notes I wrote down here is that she put her little away for about a year after her breakup with this guy because it made her feel icky, and she wasn't cool with it, and it was just like it made her feel a way that she felt ashamed. And so she doesn't like live the lifestyle out loud sort of thing. But like
She's like a closeted little.
Yeah, but I also think too, like, and a lot of the vibes I get reading some of these books is that like sees like. And so Ralphie knows that she's a little.
Is Ralphie a boy or girl?
He's a guy.
He
Okay.
gets little vibes from her.
Yes.
Is he a dom?
And he asks
He's
like
also a little.
he wonders
course.
if they're like the same.
Yes.
The way they sort of talk about it is like kind of weird. Like you're like one of us, like as if they're fucking vampires or something.
It's such a thing. But I think he's the second book. He's a little's reindeer. I think he's the second one.
I would dig a Ralphie book.
You're welcome to read that, Jack. I encourage you to do so because this is your jam, apparently. So Ralphie invites her to this event, and
what's it called?
I hate. Okay, here's the part where I'm like, okay, I can deal with this. This is lovely. This is wholesome. Whatever.
Lovely and wholesome.
No. But like the dynamics and stuff, especially in this book where it's like it's not purely sexual, but it is because it's a kink and whatever. But this is where like the line for me gets real hard. Is that they go to a munch, which is a kinkster meetup. And it's where they like hang out and be friends whenever, but it's not necessarily like a sex club kind of situation. It's more of a social meeting.
Yeah.
But like at like
it's like in a private room at the top of a bar.
and I hate the fact that I know like that's what it is. I hate the fact they use that word for it because
is that a word that
Yeah.
people use?
Oh yeah.
A
Yeah.
munch?
A bunch. Yeah, it's a thing in the kink community where it's like you just it's like a social meetup is all it is.
Okay.
Because
Like a meetup lunch?
Well, that's what I was wondering.
kind of, I guess.
Is that why they
But it's
would
not
use the
necessarily
word
a
munch?
lunch. I'm really not really sure where that word comes from.
Well, are they munching on things?
Not in this one.
Yeah, they
Because
don't
it's
really
like it's like
specify.
drinks at night basically. But
Yeah,
anyway,
it's not lunch either. So
but yeah, and so to me like it has a very specific kind of visual for me, and it doesn't involve littles is what the problem is, because like part of the kink community that's not, I don't know.
But again,
Yes. Go on.
you've been to parties.
Yep.
So, like, I wasn't being an asshole when I mentioned that. Like, your exposure to a thing would lead you to have more comfort and knowledge. Not that you've been exposed to littles, but like the
Never,
other
not one time,
dynamics,
yeah.
right? Like the BDSM component of it.
So they go to this munch.
also,
Okay.
Lillie has been to a munch before.
Yeah.
But it was with her previous daddy, so she was like a guest, and it was more like a munch for the daddies, whereas this is a munch specifically for the little.
Well, it's a munch for the kink community at large, but they specifically have a littles area dedicated to them so they would feel comfortable.
Every time you say the word munch, it makes it sound grosser.
It does.
I know.
Yep. And this is why I was like, I
It made
kind of
me
wish.
very upset. in
But
the book.
here's something, Jack, that I think I need to point out too. This book is written by a British person.
Yes.
And so
I did notice that.
I think there's a lot of terminology and phrases and stuff used in this book that don't resonate with us in a certain way.
That makes
and
sense.
I think that's one of them potentially where I'm like, I don't know. It's hard to know without.
Do they call the vagina a bum?
No, I don't think. I think they use the term cunt. I can't remember.
Because
but that's when she's big. That's the thing.
Right.
So anyway, we'll talk about that. But so they go to this.
She's big.
So she and Ralphie go to this munch, and there's a we'll just say party. They go to this event, and they sit down and there's a big coloring sheet, and there's like 4 of them, and they're coloring together.
Ooh,
There's
another
one-
girl from their work is also a little and is there.
Her name is Casey.
Casey.
Yeah, she's an accountant or something. Checks out Jack. Jack the accountant. Secret little.
Oh my god.
Gross.
Yep, a little bit. So, they go to this event, and at this, so she's like, she runs downstairs to get a drink or something at one point. And as she's like waiting there in her like cute little dress that she's wearing, because she's all dressed up, and her like her little stockings and her like Mary Jane shoes,
Yeah,
and she
and
looks
she's
adorable.
just gonna ask
She
if
has
she's
like
got
a
Mary Jane.
bow around like the top of it, like by her neck. Oh, but also before she goes downstairs, she's like meeting with the other littles.
Yeah, she meets the other littles.
And do you know what they're doing, Ashton?
Coloring?
Yes.
Calling a mermaid.
This giant fucking mermaid where they can all work on it together.
It's pretty wholesome.
And that makes me want to stop coloring.
So, 1 point for littles.
This is
Opposed
not.
to
We're
a
not.
point for what?
This is not a sales call, Jack. You're okay.
Middles?
So she goes downstairs to get another drink, and she's standing there at the bar just waiting to get service or whatever. And she hears her name behind her, and there's
Ralphie.
Aiden.
Aiden, the
Oh, yeah.
reporter.
The reporter, and he's like, "Oh, like it's good to see you. Like, what's going on? Like, what are you doing?" And she's like,
Why are you dressed like that?
and then he's like, "Oh, I'm here for the party upstairs."
Oh.
And she's like,
Same
"Oh, that's why I'm here.
event.
One of my friends from work invited me to come." And so they go back upstairs, and he carries her drink upstairs for her, of course, like a good
Gentleman.
like a good daddy. And they go upstairs, and she introduces him to Ralphie and the other littles, and then they go sit down at a table together and start coloring. Her and Aiden. And they do some chatting, and like she's in her kind of little situation, and Ralphie is like very protective of her at this point. if
But
you
he's
noticed that.
also like fucking all for it.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like he wants this to happen, but
And so-
only if it's good.
And this is where I should mention too, Ralphie's been to these events before because they're like a common occurrence. And Aiden's been to these before too. So Ralphie like has seen Aiden around, and specifically is like, I've never seen him like take anyone home sort of thing. So
Right.
he's not here just to like pick up and be sleazy or whatever. Like he's actually looking for a little girl. Like he's not just like, fucking about.
Could we maybe not call them little girls?
That's what they call them. I don't know what to tell you. It's DDLG for a reason. I can just call them LGs if you want.
Did you just say little? When you say little.
Sure. He wants a little.
Okay, good.
That
makes it less creepy.
There's a whole bunch of acronyms
Well,
for
he
these two.
also had like he has like an ex little, and it's been a while since he's had.
Yeah, it's been like a
one.
long time even.
Same,
Yeah.
like a bit of a same story. We don't know,
I don't know. There was-
exactly.
yeah, they
what
didn't
happened.
they didn't get into that one a whole lot.
I think maybe she like got murdered or something, but I'm not sure. That's just the vibes I was getting.
How high were you when you read this? So they exchange numbers,
Clearly.
and he's like, "Can I take you out on a date? Like, can I take you out for coffee or something?" And she's just like, "Yeah." Like the vibe she's getting off of him is like they sat there in comfortable silence and colored, and then they like had some good conversations, and he was like very respectful to her little and all those things. So she agreed to go on a date with him, and so
Did she ask her mom's permission?
no, her parents aren't in this as far as I know. So
Oh my god.
they could be dead.
That's why you identify as a little.
They're dead, and that's why she is the way she is.
And is that why you're the way you are?
That's what I was getting at.
Oh, we don't actually know what's going on.
I thought you were talking about your parents.
She's like a grown woman. How old is she?
I don't know. They don't have a religion
And
here.
what are you? I was drawing a correlation
Well,
there.
no, but you said, did she ask her mom?
I was implying that her parents weren't in the picture, same as your parents not being in the picture, which is why you're... Anyway,
Are you calling me out for being an orphan? Because that's me.
Don't deflect.
That was... Yeah.
Jacqueline.
So she's also getting kind of like... She's getting like a little...
Horny?
Like, she like wants to be his little... Like, she wants...
I would
She's
never
like
have gotten that vibe.
asking like, would I be able to call you daddy and like that sort of thing? And he very respectfully,
He is very chill. Like, and he you can tell, like, the vibe you get is that he's working hard to be chill because he is very excited.
Yeah,
Is he gonna come in his pants?
he
Gosh, he might.
Okay,
That
well,
would
But
be very
anyways,
respectful, but-
he insists that they have a discussion when she's big, which is when she's not little. In case you weren't sure about that, Ashton.
wow, shocking.
I could just watch the face. If Jacqueline's talking and Ashton, this is great.
The funny thing is I read a book about littles. I read a book that had a little in it a while back, and I was telling you guys about it.
That's why we knew you would like this one. So, anyways, he insists that they have a proper discussion as bigs.
Yeah.
Not middles, but bigs.
Correct.
Middles can't really make decisions for themselves.
They
yet
have to be big
either.
as well. Yeah. So they.
He doesn't want to take advantage. Sorry, go ahead.
So they have
No,
to be
and
over the
his-
age of 21?
16
Whoa!
in Tennessee, but only 12 in Alabama. So,
And that's if you're not cousins.
yeah.
Alfie is very adamant that Lily checks in with him before she goes on the date, when they arrive, and then like when she gets home, just so, like, you know, in the essence of safety, basically, in modern day, just, you know, to be safe. And of course, Aiden, who's a good guy, is like, yes, of course.
Oh, he's
Also-
totally supportive of it. And he offers to either pick her up like somewhere public, or he can go to her apartment. And she's like, oh, that's like a good thing. Well, maybe you could just meet me at my apartment building
Like in the lobby.
in the lobby.
And then also he insists that she give Ralphie his number
Yes.
in case anything happens. Like in case he has to get a hold of him for whatever reason. So, oh, Ash, you have your hand up.
Yes.
What's up?
So they go out on their date in public.
Yes. To
At
a
a restaurant. As bigs. She's
Okay.
a big. And she
So
wears
It's an
big-
Italian restaurant.
She wears like
That
big
doesn't matter. My
clothes.
question-
Like as opposed to her
Baggy
like,
clothes.
No,
Everything
not-
was hanging off. No, I
not
understand.
baggy.
So
Oh
they're
my-
they're having an adult conversation
Yes.
in a public setting.
Correct. As grown-ass adults.
As grown-ass adults. Okay. So is this where they like are trying to figure out their
This
dynamic?
is where they were figuring out
Okay.
the dynamic. Yep.
That was a
So
legit question.
no, totally. And that's what he was referring to when he's like, we need to have this conversation when you're big. This is what he means, where it's like, we need to have it because, like, this is the thing, when people get into like the little head space or the little space they call it,
Yeah.
it like they can't be responsible.
Yeah.
And so because of that, they don't have big conversations because you're supposed to be in the safe place.
Not to be confused with Mario when he eats the mushroom and becomes
Completely different.
She's like too
Yeah.
excited to have a daddy that she can't make. You know, he doesn't want to take advantage.
No, but it's
of
like
her.
subspace.
It is. It's very much.
It's
It's
like
very
it's
much.
It's like a
that.
form of subspace.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
Where it's like you're in this kind of safety zone.
See, I can kind of understand.
And it's a
Like
zone
I
of safety.
grasp it.
So they go off to their date, and she dresses like hot, of course. With
clothes.
in clothes for bigs. Yep. and
Her big girl clothes.
In adult clothes.
and they sit and they have the conversation about the dynamic, and she asks him about being a daddy, and he mentions like, yeah, I mean, I started off as a pleasure dom and then kind of worked into the caregiver role in the daddy dom situation, which is like a pretty obvious transition for a lot of people, where they're like, because pleasure doms innately are caregivers, and that's like their whole thing is they get off on pleasure of other people.
See, that I could get behind.
Hell yeah, I can fucking get behind that.
I mean, they could get behind me.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Thank you. So like he ended up focusing more, like he had a couple experiences with littles, and he was more interested in the like the caregiving, looking after somebody else kind of situation that brought as well. And then there's this like vanilla bordering on kinky, I would say. Definitely vanilla because she's what they call it, a non-sexual little. So like nothing sexual happens when she's in her like little space at all ever.
But she likes it when she's big.
Yeah, when she's big, she's
See,
like
I can get behind that.
yeah.
Kind
And
of.
so the weird line in there, of course, is like there's always like you have to correct littles when they're naughty.
Bratty?
Well, so that's different because when they're bratting, they're topping from the bottom is what's going on. That's a whole different ball game and that gets into the kinky level and almost the hardcore level where it's like that becomes a little bit more of a dynamic.
Did you know that it was just so involved when you picked this fucking book?
I did, but I don't know like much about it.
Did you delve into Fat Life when you...
No. I might do some after work.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, so, I mean, my role in this podcast is to be the researcher, so I did the research. Jack's just,
And I only read one book, not multiple.
I read 3.
Chaos,
that's what's going on. So they had that conversation about the dynamic they want to build, and they, they have, like, the consensus of how they'd like to go forward and very like open honest communication stuff. I should mention too, like around this time is when they start, she tells them a little bit more about like her autistic tendencies.
Yes, the stimming.
And like about crowds and people like that and how people have rules and she doesn't like being in large groups of people because she doesn't know the rules. And I was like, I think that's a thing a lot of people can kind of relate to of like, I don't know how I'm supposed to act around certain people and I don't know how they want to be treated. But she does that for everybody. So she's in a big crowd. She doesn't know how to read that crowd and that kind of stuff. And so I thought that part of the book was like very interesting, especially where she was like so articulate about it. I think was the big part.
Yeah, like she had her shit figured out.
Yeah, which is like, it's always kind of refreshing too, especially like being so self-aware of those things. And like, that's one of those things where I'm like, okay, you're so self-aware about yourself as an individual that like, and you've also learned to articulate yourself as a little and what you want in that dynamic. And so like they lay out like all their hard limits and she lays out like a safe word even and like using the light like the stoplight symbols.
That's black and white. Like the black and white mindset.
Yeah, oh for sure.
Huh.
Like that is definitely like here's the cut and dry situation, this is how things, but like at the same time like leaving it open for compromise to some point because he's like, I will be disciplining you if you need discipline. And that's a conversation they had about like, well, what does that look like and how does that mean? And that's when they talk about like safety and all that stuff and like
how she shouldn't be treating herself poorly.
Oh my god,
or she shouldn't be letting other people treat her poorly.
I'm so proud of you for knowing that you have to look after yourself is what he says to her.
And they also discuss like what's the word they use for like the nickname type thing?
Honorifics.
So she likes to be called
baby and
girl, and little one,
baby girl, and then also sweetheart. He
calls her sweetheart now and then. Yeah,
he calls her sweetheart when they're in public because that's a little bit more, I don't know, comfortable, I guess, for people. And then she calls him daddy and sir, which is fairly standard.
I just have to say, I super love that the ASD component is a part of it. However, it touches way too close to home for me.
It's too real.
I was like,
right?
I was
that's why I'm confused.
No, not with you, but yeah, that too. But like when you said she was a vanilla and like nothing sexual, I was like, oh, okay. Like I can wrap my head around that. Like
it's a role playing thing.
I can get behind that. Yeah. As long as nothing sexual. And then you went into that, and I was like, oh god, oh god, oh okay, yeah. And it explains a lot about you.
Jacqueline, have you ever taken a RADS R test? Do you ever think about that? Maybe
a what?
Nothing. It's okay. So
don't glare at me. She's the one who asked.
Oh, I was not glaring at you. I was looking at you for assistance as to what that fucking meant.
RADS R. It's like the autism test that you can
It
take.
just tests, to see if like you fall on this, like how if you fall on the spectrum, and
it gives you a good baseline.
Yeah.
And if you score under a certain amount of points, you can't possibly be autistic.
Yeah.
Which, fortunately, I scored under those points. So I'm like, God damn it, that doesn't explain anything about
I
me.
mean,
No, we know what's wrong
yeah,
with
that's
you.
fair. But the first time I took it, I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And I'm like, I figured it out later, but it was like, okay, well, it's not autism.
But see, you have to answer the questions for yourself.
Yes.
Her ADHD doesn't allow her to answer the questions.
Tough but fair.
Yeah.
Stop lying, Jacqueline.
ADHD doesn't allow for me to finish things, first of all.
It's a long test, too. It takes a minute.
As somebody who has very intimate knowledge / experience with ADHD / ASD.
There, Jack.
She's rubbing me. It feels nice.
So there's something else I should mention, too. She uses this phrase called scrunch.
Oh, yes.
And she uses it to describe, it's almost like anxiety is what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, she gets this feeling in her chest where she's like, oh, that doesn't feel good. I don't like that.
The well.
About situations.
Yeah, it's like an icky whelm.
Yeah. It's very interesting. But so she describes it as scrunch in the
Scrunch or
Yeah,
scrunch?
Scrunch.
well, I guess it's scrunch. CHRUNCH.
But scrunch is funny too.
Scrunch.
Like it feels like she's scrunching up.
Yeah. It's
Like,
interesting.
ooh.
And so like it's very, because like this is like from her perspective, right? So it's kind of curious to like get those, like she's such a weird character. I really
But
like
I mean,
it.
you think about it, that's a black and white kind of like,
Oh yeah.
it feels like your body's scrunching up, so she calls it the scrunch.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It's
So that-
very
that-
like literal.
Yes,
Yeah.
you just said she was on the spectrum. That makes sense.
I know. Okay, so after
Jacqueline's so into this.
she invites him back to her apartment.
Because
Cause
if you remember though,
she has ice cream.
well, but they go back out
Oh,
to the
I have ice cream.
they go back out to the car, like
Yeah.
to go home, and she's like, we should probably like after we discussed all this dynamic and stuff, she's like, do you think we should like kiss to make sure there's like a spark there or something?
But I think she invited him for ice cream first, and then
She
Oh, you
literally
could be right.
just
Yeah, yeah.
finished this.
yeah, then she decided they should kiss just to make sure there is
just
a
to make sure there's a spark, and of course there was.
Oh my god, what a spark there was!
There was a spark, and so they
How
go.
are you getting this into this book?
They're adorable.
Listen,
She's
judgment
a grown up.
free
I'm
zone.
not judging based on that. I'm just saying of all the books we've read and your scathing criticisms of all of the things, and you're like, oh my god, but it's and what a spark there was, which is how excited we get.
But she actually read this book, so that's the difference.
love
Yeah.
Ice cream. I love ice cream.
Yeah, me too, dude. I'm just saying, Rachel and I get excited like this, and you're like, no, I'm not gonna read the book. And now you're like so fucking excited. Like, I just wish you would read some of the other books.
No, that would take the fun out of it.
After we talk about them.
After.
It's fine.
And
So
what a spark there was. And then the ice cream, they melted the ice cream with their spark.
Ash, I don't know. I'm so used to saying Jack on
I
this.
know.
Ash, I don't know if you knew this, but they go back and they don't have ice cream.
They didn't even talk about what kind of ice cream it was or anything.
They have sex.
Okay, so this is where I am confused.
Okay, go ahead. So they go back to her place. She texts Ralphie to be like, I'm home. We came back to my place. And he's like, we? OMG.
Oh yeah.
Does somebody
Ralphie's
have a new
like, "Get
daddy?"
it, girl?
Oh yeah, he's a very supportive friend. He's very helpful. And then they go off to the boudoir, and then they do some naughty things. What did you want clarification on?
Ralphie's a little without a.
He doesn't have
caregiver.
Yeah, caregiver.
Apparently that's the thing.
What they call unattached little, I think is what they call it. Yeah.
So they just like to
Or
be little.
a solo little. Well, they don't have a parent figure or a caregiver yet.
It's not that he doesn't want one, it's
Yeah.
that he just doesn't have
Correct.
one.
Well, that's why I think the second book is about him, and it talks about him getting a caregiver. I think he's also looking for a daddy.
I'm not sure. I don't recall reading.
Not
it.
a
Jack was like, I'm not reading
Well,
anymore.
there's daddies or mummies, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Or NBs, I guess, because they do have a lot of non-binary characters in this. That reminds me, she's pansexual. She dates whoever.
I
Good
don't
on her.
remember it saying that. Was that in the first 3 chapters?
Yeah, it sure was.
So me and my friend last night were super duper high because yesterday was the anniversary of my dad dying. So we like to get together and have fun. So we tie-dyed and started reading this naughty book to each other because I needed to have it read for today.
Did you notice how in the group chat when you asked, she did not answer?
I did not answer.
I'm aware.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure.
I didn't know if it would be better to answer or to not answer.
We just assumed.
Yeah.
I just like to keep on top of these things.
Anyways, I was super high, and so I don't really remember a lot of the first 3 chapters.
She said she was dating guys and girls or like it was like beautiful girls and handsome guys and gorgeous NBs or something. And they use like ENBIES NBs.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I love that. I really enjoy how that's like a thing now in modern media, even where it's like instead of saying like non-binary people or like whatever, they use the term NBs. I really appreciate that.
I also I read a fanfic a while back, and the content was questionable, but it was like new age, and so everybody identifies as MX.
Oh yeah, okay.
And the only people who don't are like the breeders.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
because they're
and even they have a purpose, for lack of a better term.
And even still, I think even the male breeders identify as MX, or maybe they only identify as Mr. or Mrs. Whatever when they're in the breeding setting. But if they're like being social, because you don't know if somebody's a breeder in the social setting,
right? Of course.
They identify as MX.
Interesting.
And like they don't gender their children until they find out whether or not
they're breeders or not.
Yeah,
okay.
and like. Yeah, it's all anyway. I thought it was really interesting.
I'm a big fan of that shit, only because like I think gender's a social construct. It's a thing we just made up to sell shit, and I hate it. But yeah, whatever. I always appreciate those.
I find it fascinating to read like the new agey stuff where they take that and they run with it, and it makes sense in a way. But the whole breeder thing was just like, which I am admittedly down for. She was like,
was it a little bit too Handmaid's Tale?
She was 14.
Oh yeah, that's not good.
And he was a grown-ass adult. And
it's not the medieval times.
Yeah, and like he struggled with it, but then was like, I feel like I should do it because at least I'm going to be like, soft about it.
Oh, I fucking hate that.
No, like it wasn't like
no, it's like I might as well do it because I'm going to be nicer than that other fuck that is going to do it if I don't do it. And that is
no, because she's gonna be forced to do it one way or the other.
Exactly, but it doesn't make you a good person to be the one to do it just because you're gonna be.
It's a government thing. Like it's a whole thing. So what he does is he jerks off until he's about to, and then he like.
Let's get turkey baster.
Inserts. I don't know, man. Yeah, I anyway. Continue. NB's.
Let's talk about Little some more.
Yeah, let's go back to that.
So they don't have ice cream; they have sex. What did you want to ask, Jack?
Okay, so she said like no sexy times
as a little.
Yep. Totally makes sense. However, I feel like there was like I was getting like little vibes while they were having sex.
So this is why I said it's not quite vanilla, it's almost kinky.
Right.
Because there's still like this is the thing about this dynamic that like this is the part that I have a hard time with, is that when you are a little in little space and you have a caregiver who's your daddy in this instance, that is separate from the sexual play and the kinkiness and the fetishization of it. Okay? So like the fetishization and the kinkiness of it is still there because this is in its core a sexual dynamic. And so the whole thing as an umbrella is age play. But they're segmenting it into wholesome, lovely space where everyone's cared and looked after, which is non-sexual, and almost like an asexual situation where it's an attraction and it's caring, kind of. And so that's the kinky part, is that it's foreplay.
Asexual foreplay.
Yeah. And then you have the sexual part, which is still like the daddy and the little girl and the stuff, but you're acting as adults fetishizing that. So those are the two different creatures in this umbrella. especially where, because like vanilla is very much separate. Kinky is like separate, but like there's overlap in order to get there. And then there's the hardcore, which is there are no lines.
So I guess I just, like, I think I kind of get what you're saying, where like the kinky is like the lines are a little like blurry, whatever.
A little bit. But they're still separated to some point. But they're using it to fetishize it. And he's calling her like his little girl. And she's like, oh, yes, daddy. But it's in like the sexy way, not in the caregiver way.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like, so that, just where she said like no sex, she was like pretty adamant about that.
So I guess one way to point this out is that like she slips into what we call little space.
Yes.
And so when she's in little space, that is a non-sexual place to be. And the caregiver needs to respect that too. Because the caregiver is the one that they don't flip-flop between the two spaces per se. They can, but not traditionally. But their responsibility as a caregiver is to take care of them when they're in that little space. Right. And then like their responsibility in the other space is to take care of them in a different way.
Does it need to be very like delineated for her, like the two separate spaces?
For her. And it's interesting because I've read a couple, again, the books I've read about this. That's a fairly common thing, is to delineate them. And that seems like I'll say I don't know, I don't want to be judgy about it, but like some of the more well-written, well-rounded little books that I came across, that was kind of how they played it out. Yeah. And I don't know if that's just to be accepting or if that's the standard. I can't say. But that to me seemed like the norm.
Because that wasn't the way it was in the one that I read.
No. And then one of the very first little books I ever read, that was definitely not the case.
Yeah.
That was part of Rawhide Ranch, actually, which is like a whole different ballgame. It's a different.
That just sounds rough.
Yeah, that's all that gal writes. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but anyway.
Wait, what'd you call it?
Rawhide Ranch.
Is that the one for not Easter?
It was Stormy.
St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stormy's little St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
So, Jack, does that answer your question?
I don't know.
Okay.
Like, I get it, but I still kind of...
But it's not black and white enough for you?
No.
I see what you did there.
It's not.
This is the episode where we find out that Jack is autistic.
Thought we already knew that. So does that mean you think he has like an actual attraction to little girls?
I have a hard time with this one because again, it's the fetishization of it. It's not the thing.
So is it more about from what I'm understanding what you're saying from your explanation, it is more to do with the little's mindset than it is the daddy's mindset, because the daddy can shift. The caregiver can shift from caregiver to daddy, and that's still like they don't worry. That's okay. That's an easy shift. But the shift between little and fuck toy is like very clear.
Correct.
So,
and to the point of like, and maybe this helps too, is that like she will take a minute and like take a couple deep breaths and like transition herself out of it. Like it is a task for her to transition herself out of being a little into being a big.
Okay. So when you're social, like when you have to go and do something social, and then you so you're doing the market, right? Mm-hmm. And then you finish doing the market, it's really, really busy, but then you have to go and do something else, right? Mm-hmm. Do you need that downtime in between market and going to do something else? Say like you're going over to your sister's to have a few drinks. Do you need that downtime in between to kind of like process and get out of market space to get into go to your sister's space?
Maybe not consciously.
But this is what I mean. Like that, like you just like, okay, I can't do that right away. I just need to when we show up and you need to take a few minutes upstairs.
Yeah. That's just me masturbating.
I don't know if she's serious or not. That's disturbing.
The I is 2M.
I mean, today she was finishing the book, so. But you know what I mean? Like,
what do you think she was masturbating to?
Well, in like an introvert sort of way, where like you need to recharge.
Yes, that's what I'm getting at. There's that distinct.
There's a line.
Yeah, even though it's like you're still you.
Yeah.
You still have to switch from like social this to social that before you can't just be like, I'm doing this and I'm doing that.
Oh yeah, there's like all sorts of versions of me up there that you have to switch
exactly.
between.
So you need, but when you go from like one to another, which is like the two extremes, you need that downtime in between to be like, okay, I just need to breathe for 5 minutes before I'm inundated with people again.
And also too, something to keep in mind that when you're little, like it's a safe space.
Yeah.
In that, like, that is where you are comfortable. That is where you're safe and okay, and you're cared for and looked after. Think of them as two different people, because that's basically what's going on here. Is that she is like a different person when she is a little versus when she is a big.
So
That's
then
why
I
they
feel
call
like
them little
she's
and
like
bigs.
mocking herself.
I don't think it's mocking at all. It's
a different-
fetishizing.
It's a different form.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a different form. Like Rachel could be, or I, or you could be in the middle of getting railed and be like, "Oh, daddy," because the person is taking care of you because that's the whole daddy thing, is like they're taking care of you like a daddy.
Well, or just calling someone sir. Like that's an honorific for a reason.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that we're into the little dynamic. It just means that,
Or into business people.
Well, no, that's exactly what I mean, though. Like, we, as not littles,
or
to
we
be
mocking
determined.
them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
You feel like we're mocking them.
kind of, not necessarily mocking in like a mean way, but like
I think with Jacqueline,
it's like cultural appropriation, but not quite as
kink appropriation.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, but the thing with kink.
But I wouldn't say they look at it that way.
Yeah, I was gonna say the thing with kink, isn't it like acceptance for all of the things, and you make it what it is to you, and it just happens to fall into certain like categories were created to make people better understand it, but like you make it what it is.
And again, whenever I come back to the kink community at large, is that what goes on between two consenting adults is their own business to a point, unless it's illegal. That's a different ballgame.
But to your point, when she's a little, she's not exactly a consenting adult,
right?
Because she's like, it's like being an actor, and like the people who are oh my god, what's the term? Method actors. They are in that character. She is in that character.
Yeah, and it's like I almost look at it too, and it's like, again, it sounds a little judgy, but like it's almost a dissociation thing.
Yes.
Where it's like she turns off the adult brain and just goes to like base model.
Yeah.
And so
subspace.
And that's exactly what it is how they describe it as subspace, where it's like you're in this zone where you're perfectly safe and comfortable and you don't have to worry about anything.
When you're overstimulated and you just need to
that's
stop.
the part that I understand, but I don't understand why her as an adult
would still call him daddy.
Yeah.
Because that's just something people do.
That's a thing people do. It's a fetishization of it.
But she's so adamant that her little isn't sexual, so why?
Oh, she wants clearer lines is what she wants.
You want more black and more white?
Yeah, she needs clearer lines between the two. She's getting caught up in the semantics of that.
Oh, okay. I mean, if you want to look at it this way, that she's calling him daddy, it's not for her potentially, it's for him.
Yeah.
Because you want to look at it that way? Because that's her dad. That's a daddy.
He's taking care of her.
He's a daddy dom. Like, yeah. And you don't. Do you remember the Penguins? He was a daddy dom, but he wasn't like daddy.
The Penguin.
Always bring her back to the Penguins, and she like her eyes go glazed, and she's happy.
Well, I mean, Rev called Chris daddy through that entire thing.
I guess I feel like he started it by calling her like little whatever.
Little girl.
Bird.
Or little one.
Little one.
Yep.
Even though she already said very specifically no sex during little.
I could see, okay, I haven't read it obviously, but I could see why that would tie her up a bit. Like because that does almost seem like he's crossing a line using, unless did they have a conversation about honorifics in between call me this during this, call me this during this.
He mentioned it to her. Talking about sweetheart specifically was one they talked about. And he's like, I'll call you sweetheart like all the time, basically. And like in the space, it was daddy and sir. I don't know. I don't really answer that question. I'm not sure.
Because this kind of feels like I feel sex wizards is this consent kind of thing. And
this is what I will say, is that we're talking in generalistics about an entire umbrella of kinks. in the context of a book that is 70 pages long. So that's what I'll say about that.
Rachel's like, we've spent enough time talking about this.
No, I just like
moving on.
Well, no, like
guess I was just talking about these two specifically.
and like that, Jack. Again,
like I know that other relationships, like I'm sure they work that out where
there are, generally they have, and like, again, it's a short book, so they're talking in general terms about things, but they did pack in a lot of like open, honest communication into that like 70 pages. We're not even at the conflict yet. Let's talk about the conflict, because there's got to be a third act conflict.
Is somebody going to shut down the Stuffie Hospital?
No, it's not even that dramatic, Ash.
Oh.
So
does her old big person come back?
So they
dramatic, even
way
than
less
that.
dramatic.
Oh, God.
So they have their date, and the next day she's at work doing her thing, and she's like, "La la, I'm dumb. I can't." Like she's so
Like as a big, she's dumb, or she's like
as a
subspacing.
No. Well, she's just like in a zone where she's like,
She's just like
I'm
smitten.
so happy. Yeah, she's totally smitten.
Okay. Well, it's a valid question.
Mm-hmm. And so she goes on her day, whatever. About halfway through her day, Aiden comes in. And she's like, "Oh, hi." Like, like being nice and greeting him, whatever. And he was texting her throughout the day, but like, "Oh, did you have your snack?" And like,
Oh, yeah.
make sure you stay hydrated and have a drink. And like, he's daddying her, basically, which is adorable. And he comes in and he goes off with, was it Rebecca?
Yes.
Yeah, one of the other her coworkers who does repair and stuff. And he's like, "Oh, I have to ask Rebecca a question about the article or something, and only she can answer it." And she's like, "Oh, okay, well, okay." And he's like, "Are you all right?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Even though they have the same job, and she could easily answer any question that Rebecca could answer.
Not miscommunication.
So she goes off and whatever, and he ends up like whatever poking around. And so she starts having a panic attack because she gets in her head about this. And she's like, "Oh, do we just have an entire night and now you just don't want anything to do with me anymore?" And she like totally starts spiraling. Yeah, basically gives her the cold shoulder, and she like spiraled out of control with that one. And so that's literally, she has a panic attack. She goes off into like the stock room or whatever and like has a meltdown. And like one of the other workers comes in and like helps her breathe through it and all that stuff. And he's like, "Maybe you should like go home for the day or whatever." And so she goes back out into the hospital room, and she runs into Aiden, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm just not feeling well. I'm going to go home." And he's like, "I'm going to take you home." And so he takes her home, and they have like, because one of the things he said, and this is always, always, always the case in all of these books, it's always like the one thing daddies don't want, you can never lie to them. It's like this thing where it's like, you always have to tell me what's going on. You always have to be, because again, in a caregiver space, it's like you can only be as good as the communication you receive. And it's like, if you can't communicate properly, you can't look after properly, etc. So they go back and have the conversation about like what is going on, and you lied to daddy and all this stuff. And I think he spanks her at this point or something, and she cries.
You said you were okay.
You said you're okay, and you lied. Yeah. And so they, he spanks her because they get with big feelings, and she has a cry, as they always do.
And she's apologizing.
She's very sorry and always apologizing.
But
thank you for disciplining me, Daddy.
But he gets upset because she's apologizing because she should be thanking him,
not apologizing
because he's
teaching her a lesson,
teaching her and helping her or whatever.
And then after all of that, and they like sit down and have snackies or whatever, he lets her know the reason that he was there speaking to Rebecca is because he wanted to make sure that he had stitched up her new unicorn properly, because he got her a unicorn and fixed it himself and gave it to her.
Because
and that's her Stuffie.
Didn't have any stuffies.
And so he got her a Stuffie.
Even though she was a stuffy doctor, she didn't really feel like she really like deserved one.
And that's pretty much the book. That's really it. There's no epilogue. There's no more.
And then after, it's like, and then we cuddled and read a book or something like that.
Literally it. That's literally in the book. And that's where it ends. And so that's why I got Jacqueline the unicorn. And that's why it's called Little's Unicorn. So give her a Stuffie.
Because she's the little. and he gives her a unicorn.
Thanks for that.
You get it?
Thank you.
So Ashton, I have something for you to read. Thank you for being here.
Well, aren't you good dressing up all pretty for me? The touch of his hand on her knees made her wriggle, and he groaned, "Damn, baby girl," because she could feel him now, hard and insistent beneath his trousers, pressing up between her thighs. She wriggled again, experimentally, and he gave her a smart rap on the arse. "Oh! Behave yourself, Lily." It was the first time he'd used his Dom voice on her, and it made her go all melty, as if someone had flicked a switch in her brain, and now she was in full-on sub mode. "Yes, sir." He grinned at the honorific and then tugged at her hair until her neck was bared for him. "I love you, all dressed up for me." Each word was punctuated with a kiss or a nip or a lick that made her almost mule in pleasure. But, and here he nipped and sucked at the point where her neck met her shoulder until she almost melted into a puddle in his arms. "I think I'd like to see you undressed a little more." Shocking.
Shocking.
Standing on shaky legs, Lily stood up and slowly untied her. Oh, of course, she's wearing a halter dress. Slowly untied the halter neck of her dress, looking down as the fabric rustled and then pulled it around her ankles. Stepping out, she peeked up at him from under her lashes. His gaze felt like a touch, caressing every inch of her skin, lingering over the swell of her hips and the curve of her stomach. She never felt more desirable than in that moment. He stood up and pulled her flush against him. One hand curved around the nape of her neck. "You're beautiful, baby girl. Now get on the bed." Blinking, she crawled onto the bed, squeaking as he grabbed her feet and flipped her over. "Bra off, please, late baby girl." She obeyed as he moved to kneel above her on the bed, bracketing her with his arms before leaning down to take one nipple in his mouth. Lily almost arched up off the bed. His mouth was teasing, alternating between kissing and sucking and gentle biting at her breast, and each time she moaned. It only made him do so more. "Stroke yourself for me," he whispered in her ear as he moved to her right breast, and then Lily reached down to feel her between her legs. She found that her knickers were sodden.
Her knickers were sodden.
Oh, at that point, sodden is the gross word. The heat of her pussy radiated through the material, and then she was pulling them to one side and sighing as she ran her fingers between her lips and up to her clit. She trembled beneath his mouth and ran her other hand through his hair, desperate to hold on to something as the pressure between her legs built. And then his mouth was gone, the air cool against her exposed nipple, and she felt almost bereft at the loss of it, at least until his lips kissed her in her thigh. "How do you feel about coming apart from me, baby girl?" What? "Use your words, please, sweetness. Tell me how you need me." She almost came apart then, his words filling her the way words hadn't in far too long, but she stopped circling her clit with her thumb and forced herself to meet his eyes. "Can you lick me, please, Daddy? I'd like to come apart beneath your mouth." "Well, since you asked so nicely." When he pulled her knickers down her legs, she was grateful that she'd taken the time to pull them up over her stockings earlier. And then his face was there. I love the italics on there.
There.
And he was stroking and teasing, and good grief, that felt good. "Oh, please, Daddy, please."
Why you gotta make it weird?
You picked the fucking book. Oh, no, Jack did. Sorry.
Don't come at me.
She reached out, and there his hair was, spilling over her thighs. How long is his hair?
He had it up in a man bun.
He did. It's very long hair.
Okay. Just like he'd promised, and she thought she'd never seen anything so beautiful. He lapped at her pussy first, as if determined to get every last drop of her wetness before licking up until he could suck her clit into his mouth. It was oh so much, almost too much, and moaned and writhed beneath his mouth. When he chuckled this time, she felt it everywhere. "How you doing there, baby girl?" Her fingers fluttered against her thighs, and then she was stroking his hair over and over, as if touching him would stop her from floating away altogether. More, please, Daddy, if that's okay." More. His words were teasing, and she didn't feel self-conscious. All that mattered was him and her. Can you feel me, please?" He took her clit in his mouth again and sucked hard as he slid a finger into her, half laughing as she buckled beneath him. You like that? Yes, yes. Oh, please, yes. I like please, baby girl. And you have been so very good. So how about I? Lillie wasn't entirely sure what he did next. Some kind of daddy magic with his fingers that had her crying out louder than she thought she'd ever done before. And then she was clenching and tightening. And then with one more whisper, please, she fell into waterfalling pleasure where nothing existed but his hands and his mouth and his hair covering her like a blanket of stars. When she came to, he was holding her in his arms, kissing her every time. An aftershock ran through her body. You did so well, baby girl. I'm so proud of you. She leaned in and kissed him, smiling at the taste of her on his lips. Thank you, Daddy, but I'd like to. Then she reached towards the front of his trousers and paused. Is this okay? Standing up, he pulled off his belt. Oh, he's still dressed, of course. Mm-hmm. He pulled his belt off, snapping the leather tight in his hands, and then laughing at how wide her eyes got. Not today, baby girl, but another time, I promise. And then he was undressing, and finally, she got to see his cock. It was hard, which she'd already guessed.
I should hope so.
Obviously. Didn't she feel it pressed against her? Mm-hmm. But she could see pre-cum glistening on the tip, and she crawled forward to the edge of the bed and licked it off. Yum, you taste so nice, Daddy. He groaned and took her head in his hands and nudged her forward again. When she took him in her mouth, she loved how he felt beneath her tongue, velvet over steel. Swirling her tongue around the tip, she urged herself to take him deep and deeper until she was bobbing her head up and down and his cock hitting the entrance to her throat each time. But he didn't let her suck him for too long. She almost whined when he pulled her head off him and he leaned down to kiss her. I will fill all your holes, baby girl. Of course you will. And then she was on all fours, arse in the air, and his fingers were back stroking her entrance, gathering her wetness and slipping in and out, stretching her in preparation for his cock. Then unrelenting emptiness, whilst during the tearing of foil, and then he was back nudging at her entrance until she pushed back and took all of him in one fell movement. It was almost overwhelming at first. It had been so long since she'd been fucked, and she'd forgotten how totally full it made her feel. And when he bottomed out in her pussy, her moans became incoherent scream of nonsense, and she had no control over. Just moaning and babbling and begging for him more and faster and daddy until he was pounding her pussy lips over and over. Then his fingers were slipping beneath her to touch her button, and she was gone. I'm assuming it means clit.
Yeah, it's her go button.
Her go button?
Go, Daddy.
Do they call it that in the book, or did you? Okay, I was like, what the fuck? Shattering again and again as he moved in her, around her, holding her, pressing at her, caressing her, fucking her. He came with a shout, and as he spent himself, he enveloped her within his arms. Lily's cheeks were wet, and she didn't even realize that she'd been crying until he turned her over and kissed them gently away. Are you okay, my sweet girl? Yes, Daddy, she whispered. Would you like me to stay over? She nodded vigorously. Please, Daddy, please don't leave me tonight. And then he was picking her up and holding her in his lap, rocking her back and forth, muttering sweet praises into her ear until she calmed.
Thank you for that
scene.
Thanks for that dramatic reading, Ashton. I really appreciated that.
What is the look on your face
Jacqueline's
for?
so happy right now.
You're hilarious.
What do you mean you're not good at reading? That was amazing.
I vote that Ashton reads from now on.
I was just going to say, can we not make that a common thing? And if we do, can I at least read the book first?
Oh, no.
So how did you find that? Was that okay?
That was fine.
Yeah, okay.
I thought you were going to make me read something squeamish.
Here's the thing. Jacqueline wanted you to read something squeamish.
You would have gotten a bigger reaction if you had me read the little stuff.
But this is the queen of spice. And we want to get to the spicy bits. So...
Yeah. I wanted you to read little things.
I bet you did.
I will say, too, though, that, like, some of the scenes in this book with the littles are not quite as good as some of the other ones. In that, like, I read another book that I'll talk about shortly that it's, like, they, like, full-on go into little space and have full conversations in little space. And so, like, that's kind of a different creature. This is, like, it's so brief in little space. It's, like, where she's coloring with the kids at the munch, and then... like
Munch.
and then briefly with points with her daddy, and like not like big long swashes of it, because again, it's 70 pages, so like there's not a lot going on there.
My brain automatically went to, she did the munch. She did the monster munch. She did the little munch.
Vicious. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Ash.
Do what I can.
She munched a scrunch.
Jesus. So we're gonna rate this book on Stuffies.
Of course we are.
Obviously.
Obby.
There are 8 books, so we're gonna rate it on 8 Stuffies. Jacqueline, you have 1 Stuffie so far. It's a unicorn.
It is a unicorn.
What would you rate this book, given that you read it from start to finish?
I did.
So you have a comprehensive overview of it this time. So what?
And you picked it.
Yeah. So what are you gonna rate it?
How many Stuffies are we rating it?
8.
8.
Uh,
I'm just watching her brain shut down. As she
It's wonderful.
thinks.
Yeah.
oh, it was so bad. It was so short. Like, how do you?
That's by your doing there, dude.
I know, but I had picked out a different book. Then we couldn't do that one, and then got kind of panicky. But anyways, so I didn't have like a chance to read like 400 little books to find the perfect one for you.
The perfect little for Ashton.
Oh, a perfect little for Ashton.
No!
That is a new story. Okay, so
The look on
definitely
Rachel's
it
face.
gets a bonus 2 Stuffies because of Ashton's reading.
That was the highlight of my year.
Yeah. So in my notes, and I know you found it quite problematic or like silly, whatever, the conflict,
The third act conflict.
I say in quotations because not super big deal. But as like potential autism kid on some sort of spectrum with the ADHD and whatnot, I can like totally see giving yourself a fucking panic attack about you just like had dinner with this guy and like opened up about being a little and like you want to be his little and you want him to be your daddy, and then you have sex and you don't even get ice cream and like all of that, and then he's like super sweet and like stays the night, and then I feel like there was something in the morning that was nice, and like, you know, you're getting all the good vibes, and then he just like shows up at your work, goes to talk to your coworker, gives you the cold shoulder, and you're just like, why? Like, what the fuck? And then so you're just like trying to think of everything, like, oh, what did I say? Was there something stupid I did last night? And like you're all in your
The
head,
entire synopsis.
right? Anyways, so I kind of liked that. It felt a little real to me.
A little real.
A little real. But yeah, so the whole little thing, interesting.
Jack will be delving into
So
that.
what's your rating then, Jack?
Stuffies?
Rating, Stuffies.
8 Stuffies.
I'm going to go with 3 normal Stuffies.
Okay. Yep.
2 of which are from Ashton.
Okay. Bonus Stuffies.
Plus,
Beanie Babies?
For reading well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
plus the unicorn Stuffy that he fixed up for her.
Mhm. So it's 4.
And a really, really sad Stuffy from the wall of Stuffies. And then my new Stuffy from Rachel.
What are you going to name your new Stuffy?
I don't know.
Francis.
That's a good name. Francis the Unicorn?
It doesn't like you, though, because you're not a virgin.
So what was that total rating?
I don't know.
Okay.
4, 5,
It's like 4.
6.
Let's go with 4.
4. Okay. So 50%. Oh, man, like a 2? So many reasons. So I how many reasons? 1, not into this. It's not my jam.
Stuffies.
Not at all. Well, Stuffies I don't mind. I have a lot of stuffed animals. But like not littles. Not my thing. Especially given how many little books I read in the last week. Definitely not my thing. I can appreciate and understand the dynamic. I appreciate the fact that the author really sussed it all out and discussed the dynamic and the open, honest communication and all those things. This is like a 70-page book. So there's like, we fleshed out a lot of stuff about her as a character. I know fuck all about Aiden.
Yeah.
Not a damn thing. he's such a secondary character in this in a big way. And I'm like, cool. I know more about Ralphie than I do about Aiden. And Ralphie's a background character.
But yeah, she was pretty interesting.
She's definitely very, and this is the thing too. It's like, I would love to have a character like her in another book that is well more versed. Like,
okay,
That's fair.
yes.
because she's a very, like, the way the author describes like her autism and how she comes to terms with it and how much she knows about it and can articulate it. It's like,
And
I love
advocates
that.
for herself.
Yeah, and like and to advocate and to express herself and all those things. And it's like, that was a lovely part of this book, and that's the only reason I'm giving it a 2. If that hadn't happened in this book, it'd be getting a solid 1 because I just like the the author Ellie Rose. She's an okay author. It's very repetitive, and
I liked the coloring.
it just
Were there coloring pages in the book, or you just mean that they were coloring?
that they were coloring in the book.
Okay.
In the, yeah,
Oh yeah, it's a okay.
yeah. Whatever, man.
Are
It
you
is-
gonna buy this one?
I actually can't. It doesn't. You can't buy a physical copy of it, unfortunately.
That's a relief.
Yeah, darn. So I have it on Kindle, but it's on Kindle Unlimited, but you can't get a physical copy because again, novella. It's very short.
Okay,
So unfortunately, I bought Jacqueline a Stuffie instead.
that's fair.
So
Aww.
somebody got money somewhere. The corporate machine shall continue. So, Ash, what do you think?
I think it's very hard to rate a book that you've never read.
Right?
Like insanely hard.
Uh-huh.
Because my normal go-tos are like, how repetitive is it? How much was this used? What's the writing like?
I
Representation.
mean, you got a little bit of writing based on what you read.
And I did stumble over that because there's some, but see, I don't know if that was like
The British.
the British way of the writing,
Yeah.
or if it was just me because I just read it on the fly, or what.
I will say though, I stumbled over some of the British in some parts of this book. There were like definitely like, oh, that's a weird way to phrase that, but I understand what you
Or
mean.
there were periods. No, this is obviously a British thing, but there were like periods in weird places.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've got enough of that in my own life. I don't need it in the book.
Miscellaneous periods. No one wants that.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I like you just said. From what you said about the character, and I would read that in another setting, well written, because I am a whore for representation like that. Particularly where this is a character who I see aspects of in my own life, and like talking about her community. Not you, dude. Not you.
Just perked up.
No, I meant you.
No, not me either.
No, Ash just has anxiety.
Yeah, and possibly ADHD. But like when you talk about her advocating for herself, that's a huge thing that I do with my son. And as like having a 10-year-old boy who is on the spectrum, teaching him that it's okay to do that and do so in a comfortable and safe and that kind of stuff. And one of the things that we actually do talk about is when he gets overwhelmed using the stoplight system. Like if he feels like he's amping up, yellow, telling people yellow, because it means that he's verging on a red. And like that,
Well, it's a good stopgap for him too, because he can recognize that, and it's like,
easy.
yeah, for
It's
sure.
super, super easy, so I love that. I'm gonna have to go with like a 2 or a 3,
that's
like,
totally fair.
and I like based solely on the representation that I grasped from what you guys are providing. And like it sounds like the author had a firm, because that's another thing that gets really irritating when you read a book that has a thing in it that, you know, not that I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but like I said, I have the child, I also have the partner who is almost definitely on the spectrum. I have it a lot in my life, so I like seeing that represented in a positive way. I honestly, it's something that I've been looking for, trying to find books.
It's not something you come across very often.
Yeah, which is like last week when I talked about An Unexpected Heir, seeing that like mindset of like the chaos and all of the things. Like I read it because the premise sounded great, but I also, as soon as I got that character and those pieces of that character, I sunk into it heavier, because I like seeing the people that I exist around represented in fiction like that, which might not be everybody's thing, but yeah. So let's 2 or 3, 2.
That's
2.
fair. So
Jack really liked it.
thanks for bringing that book to
I
our
didn't
attention.
really
Jack.
know.
Appreciate that. I would like to talk about. I would not like to talk about, but I'm going to talk about another little book that I read.
Oh my god.
This
she's
was-
hooked.
This was the. I am definitely not. I am never going to read another little book again. So help me God.
Joke's on you. You got one in your fucking Amazon cart.
Do I? Which one?
The one that I read with the guys who were in the during the pandemic, and like it started off as a dom sub relationship. Russ and Cal.
I have too many on my TBR.
I'll point it out
Okay,
to you
that's fine.
because Maddie is the one that ends up being the little, and he's like, there's a point where he drinks urine, and he's like,
Gross.
that's a tart taste. Yeah, and there's a milking machine. It's a whole fucking ride, and I do not know why I finished it.
So I read the contingency book that we were talking with Jack. I went ahead and read it.
The sprinkles one?
It's called The Little Secret. A Little Secret by Allie Bell and Adeline Rain. I think Allie Bell writes little series. I can't remember what they're called.
Is she the ranch one?
She might be the ranch one.
think
One of them is the
so.
Rawhide Ranch person.
I think it's her.
So Amanda and Kelsey share everything, or so they think, until a chance encounter reveals a huge secret that they've been hiding from each other. Now they're exploring being little together. Under a watchful eye of Amanda's daddy, Seth, everything seems perfect until Seth's adventure-loving brother, Nathan, returns home. Kelsey falls hard for the handsome world traveler, and before long she is living a life she only ever dreamed of. But Kelsey discovers a dangerous secret that could ruin everything they hold dear, or it could lead to the greatest adventure of their lives. So that was that was such a fucking weird book. Okay, so we've got these two people who are friends. They live across the road from each other, and the chance meeting is they go to like this princess movie in the middle of the day, and they both happen to go to the same movie, and they both happen to dress up in their like little apparel or whatever to go to this movie, and they run into each other. They're like, oh my god, are you gasp, they're both littles, oh my god. And then they end up being BFFs, obviously, and they have sleepovers.
Jacqueline's like, when is this going to happen in my real life?
I need little clothes.
And so, and this was another one where it's like, Kelsey had, they call her Kels had another like shitty relationship with a guy and locked her little away for a long time and like is not out in the open about it. And then her BFF Manda, they call her Manda, like short, drop the A. Amanda. Amanda has her daddy Seth, who she's married with, or married to and lives with. And they live in this town, and what?
I have a question, a legit question.
Go for it.
So, are littles and daddies, are they like always in a relationship, or
I wondered that too.
or is it sometimes like just
Casual?
a like vanilla dynamic where they're meeting each other's needs but not?
So I can't confidently speak to that.
I'm just wondering where you researched it.
When I researched it, it seemed, because this is the thing too about especially BDSM dynamics at all, or kink dynamics, is that they are generally sussed out to a point, and so very much are they not on the fly. And so I would make the leap, I don't think it's much of a leap, I would make the jump to think that if it is a casual relationship, it's a recurring casual relationship.
Yeah.
But it would be like a friends with benefits situation potentially, where it's like you would see each other on occasion, but maybe you're not dating and living together and all those things. But I would also hazard that type of dynamic is very much centered around being together and togetherness in general. And I don't think that's a thing that people can easily turn off and on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like there has to be a level of intimacy involved.
It's in that one specific, in that dynamic specifically of like, and they would want to be around each other all the time because it's that caregiver. It's like that really in-depth dynamic that I think when people are going down into that type of dynamic, they do it all the way.
Okay.
It's not like a partial thing. Like I just do this on the weekend sort of thing. Like, especially, and it's hard to judge off the books that I've read, obviously, because it's like, these people are specifically looking for a daddy. Like they are going out of their way to find that one partner. And so like that is the mission they are on. So is there casual stuff? Probably. I would say it's more on like the hardcore side of it versus the vanilla side of it, because the vanilla is a safe space you're creating. And so that has a level of trust associated with it that like you would have to
wouldn't
build.
be like a bestie. Because like you think about my relationship with like some, well, you know what I'm talking about, like where we were like we're such close friends. Not that I would ever be interested in a dynamic like that, but like if I weren't going to be in that form of situation with my partner, that is the one person that I would choose, and it wouldn't be sexual, but we still have that tightness. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. So like this is a perfect example, this book that I read.
Okay.
So
Continue.
Yeah, so Kelsey and Amanda are like best friends.
Yeah.
And there is nothing sexual about this at all. They're literally like hanging out and being littles together. Like being 7-8-year-old kids together. However, what you need to understand is that this dynamic still exists with daddy. And so they have to follow the rules of the house. And so they're allowed to be kids, but they're kids left alone, basically, is what's going on here. And they're still adults with adult whatever. But they're acting like little. So they do stupid shit sometimes. Like, hey, instead of, we don't have ice cream to make sundaes, so let's just make all the sundaes on the counter. And they just spray fucking whipped cream all over the counter and throw all the toppings on it and then eat it off the counter. Like, shit that kids would do.
Right? That's why it sounds so fun.
But that you're not, but like it's against the house rules because you're not allowed to do that.
Jacqueline just wants to be a little so she can do whatever the fuck she wants.
So you need a little best friend is what you need. Not a little sexual partner.
Yeah.
Not a daddy. You need a best friend. So that's what this book is basically about. It's about these two best friends that find out they're both littles and they have like a friendship together. Like but then it's also about like Amanda has her daddy Seth, and then Seth's brother is also a daddy dom, surprise. And so she has like Kells has always had a crush on him, like well before anyone knew anyone was a little or whatever. And so it worked out, obviously. As soon as you find that out, you're like, oh, okay, they're gonna end up together, which they do.
Shocking.
And then there's like, oh man, there's this whole like antics kind of bullshit that goes on where Seth and his brother Nathan own a veterinary hospital. And that's their job. Like, that's their day job.
They're vets?
Yeah, they're vets. And,
Stuffy vet?
no, normal vets. Amanda works there. She's one of the co-owners. And they get, Kel's a job there because she's like a receptionist / insurance person, like with the insurance through or whatever. So that's her job. She ends up losing her old job and gets this new job. And in the middle of, so the serious part of this is that they, Kells accidentally comes across this like insurance fraud scam being run by one of the employees. And so they like between her and Amanda, they like bust this puppy, like legal puppy ring where they were like abducting puppies and selling them across. Like it was a whole thing. Ash.
What?
It goes off the rails. It goes off the rails.
Cruella de Vil.
Totally.
Don't do the puppies. Don't make me cry.
Oh, no, they're fine. They're all fine. And they're all fine to the point, Ash, that at the end of it, they saved, they rescued more puppies from this puppy mill thing. And since they run a vet, they like had this adoption run where it's like they had people come in and adopt these puppies. And there's one puppy that didn't want to go home with anybody else. So it had to go home with Kells. And Nathan got our puppy.
Why can't anybody get me a puppy? I'm not a little, but I'd like a puppy.
You have to be a little to get a puppy. Sorry.
That is inaccurate.
So,
Anyway, I will get myself a puppy. Thank you very much. I will be my own daddy.
You are your own daddy. So anyway, it was a book. It was a book, and I read it.
There was choices made.
And the writing was okay. It's a very repetitive book. Very repetitive book. If you're into spanking, read this fucking book. I'm not,
with all
but
the spanking?
it's so spanking is supposed to be. They call it like an attitude adjustment, but what it's actually doing is it's like a circuit breaker kind of situation, because when littles go down the road of being like littles, like they get into it almost too far.
Yeah.
And that's when they start getting like little shits, basically. And when they start turning into little shits, they're like, time to get this shit sorted out.
Like
so it's
actual children. Like
yeah.
they...
So it's a circuit breaker of
I
like
love how you're telling me that, and I'm
the
the
one with the actual
child.
child.
No, but I mean, like, you've talked about that before.
where it's like,
Like having to be like, just like,
Okay,
make the noise, not the smack.
not the
just
pitch.
like a noise.
let's
to,
be
like,
clear.
Yeah, no. but it's about interrupting the thought process that is going in a direction.
Disruption. Yeah.
And so like
Getting ahead of it.
That's the method they use in order to do that.
Cutting it off at the knees.
Correct. But it's also like, you know, foreplay.
I just mean in general, there's been a lot of books. It seems like people really lean heavily on spanking.
That's the thing.
And maybe it's because I'm not super into it that I'm like, I just find it like in the books that I've read, I found it to be repetitive that how it comes up, I think is my thing.
Yeah. I mean, like it's one of those things too. It's like, it's such a normality in like even pornography and stuff like that, where it's like the go-to is just to smack someone's ass, right? Like in the middle of it.
Thing people
it's just
think
it's
of.
a thing they do. And it's like, okay, cool. This is what we're doing now.
I just feel like I've been oversensitized.
Oh,
to
it's so oversaturated in everything.
Yeah.
So that was The Little Secret by Allie Bell and Adeline Rain. If you want to give that a read, it's on Kindle Unlimited. Man, it's a book, and I read it.
Yeah, you did.
Which one did you like better?
Not gonna answer that question. Don't make me choose.
I plead the fifth.
Don't make me choose.
Oh, wait!
Jack-
You read all three.
I did.
Which one's the best?
I think the one I just talked about is probably the best one of the three of them. Sadly.
Jack, what have you been listening to, reading, whatever?
Nothing.
Nothing good. You were reading this book.
I know, 70 pages took me a while.
Jesus.
I'm all booked out for weeks.
You were trying to decide if that was the book you were going to do, and I read 3 books in the meantime.
I know. I thought getting Jacqueline to pick a book was going to be chaos, and I was right.
It wasn't.
Until it was.
Ash, what do you want to talk about?
So after reading Fourth Wing, I was like, Rebecca Yarros, eh? So she's got a new book out called In the Likely Event. And it's about Izzy Astor, who meets this guy and Nathaniel Phelan. And Nathaniel Phelan is a like special ops guy in the, army type thing.
Navy SEAL or something.
Yeah, he's special ops. And so he is supposed to go on vacation, and he doesn't choose. He's supposed to go on vacation, and he gets asked to stay on for this like diplomatic thing because the guy who is supposed to relieve him is sick. So he's like, yeah, sure. He studies up on the guy he's supposed to like work with / protect. He's like an aide to a congressperson, and they're waiting for them to show up in Afghanistan. I can't remember where. And who walks off the plane but Isabeau Astor? And so it's one of those books that goes back and forth between like past and present, because it's telling their story as like how they met, because they have a history, versus like where they're going and like why she's there, because she's not supposed to be there and he hasn't seen her in 3 years. And so they actually met on an airplane, and he gave up his seat for a mom. Anyway, they're sitting next to each other, and she doesn't like flying, and they're talking and whatever, and the plane crashes, and he like helps her through it, and like through the crash, and they're like they get out and whatever, and he's just so sweet, and he basically saves her life because she ends up like something with her spleen, and anyway, he's trying to keep her conscious and does things like thinks to ask her what her blood type is, because he's trying to get her to talk, but he's also trying to get information like, do you have any allergies? And so when they eventually get to shore, because it crashes in a river, anyway, so she's there in Afghanistan, and he's like, you're not supposed to be here, she's engaged, blah blah blah, all of the things. And she's there because she's trying to get her sister. Her sister's a journalist, a photojournalist, and so she's been sneaky about it, and she wants to get her sister out because like the country is falling, kind of thing. And so their past bits are like all the times that they've met up, because it's kind of like a not meet cute necessarily, but like it's like the universe keeps throwing them back together.
It's like a fated thing.
Yeah, like they meet again, like she forgets his name and can't read his last name because he has to sign the forms or whatever. And then he's getting ready to deploy within a day or two, and he's at a bar, and all of a sudden there's this like bachelorette party, and he's like, shit, it's that, no, it can't be. And then it is, and like this is the one where they went on the date and they bought each other books and they highlighted the books. This is the one. This is the one. Anyway.
Be still my heart.
Yeah. And so he's like, and you find out like why, and like all of the things. And he's obviously tragically troubled based on things that he's experienced and so on and so forth. And I don't tend to gravitate towards military, and like I've read the one, that Heartbreak Warfare one, which I did talk about.
Yeah, and Yaros has that military background, so
well, that's exactly.
Does she tend towards a lot of
Yeah, she is. I actually went and looked up the information because I was like, I feel like if you're going to write content like this, it's not that you can't write it if you don't have the background, but I respect it more because it's not to be like anti-war, or you know what I mean, like anti-establishment stuff, but like it's not my thing and I don't jive towards that. But she's a daughter of 2 military officials, and she's got 20 years as military spouse, and her husband retired, and she lived through both wars, and like this is all on online, and like through him being deployed and through him being injured and all of those things. So I think if somebody's going to write from that perspective, unless you're like horses mouthing it, this is like, okay, cool.
Yeah. She has the perspective of it.
Yeah. And just like he deals with it. Like he doesn't want to deal with it because he doesn't want that against his record, because they won't let him go back, and like, you know, all the things and like the traumas and blah, blah, blah. But like he realizes he has to, and he goes to therapy. Like, we stan a man who deals with his shit. Anyway, and it was, like, I guess not shocking considering how much I love Fourth Wing, but it was well done. I really, really enjoyed it. It's her most recent one in the Likely Event by Rebecca Yarros.
Nice.
Delightful.
Well, thanks for Ash. I like that. Sounds good.
It's cute.
It's cute.
The date thing was just like...
Sorry, bookstore dates are like the most fucking adorable thing. Especially, I mean, you're talking to two very avid readers, where I'm just like, swoon, take me to a bookstore.
But yeah, we also had the conversation about how like men written by women are ruining...
Oh my God, everything.
Men for women.
Yeah.
It's like, but there is a standard, and no man's going to be it because they're not written by a woman, unless you're Oscar Isaac, in which case I'm pretty sure you're written by a woman. But like, the female gaze is real, and I love that women are like really kind of catching on to that now. It's like we've always known, but like seeing the romance renaissance really come to a fruition is like,
I can't wait for it to catch up.
Right? And like rom-coms are now a thing again. Like, yes,
Such
fucking
a big
please.
thing. Such a big thing. Well, book talk is like really kind of taking center stage.
Oh, big
I
time.
think in like a lot of ways, and like so the rom-com like era is fucking back, and it's gonna be great.
Yep.
So to that point, next time we are back, it's gonna be the new year.
Whoa.
For starters. Also, Merry Christmas.
And happy birthday,
if you
Jack.
celebrate. And happy birthday, Jack.
Happy holidays.
Happy whatever you celebrate.
Happy holidays.
The next time we're back in January is Werewolves Hate Claws
Yes!
by K.L. Hires.
That's what that reminds me of.
I haven't read this book yet, and I'm so excited to read it.
Don't point at my unicorn like
There's
that.
a unicorn in it.
Yay!
Only it's the harbinger of death.
Yay!
And we'll talk about that next time we're back, guys. So like, Happy New Year, happy birthday, Jack. Thanks for joining us this year.
Stay safe, everybody.
Stay safe, make good choices, and
We love you.
Eat
We love
turkey.
you.
Woo! Thanks, Daddy.
bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Queens of Spice podcast. You'll find us on Instagram and Twitter at Queens of Spice. Or if you want to send us an email, you can reach us at queensofspice@gmail.com.